Hello and welcome to White City Place Connect, where we are providing a platform where we can engage during this lockdown and stay well and basically just connect with each other. So this is for all the occupiers of White City Place. Thank you for being here, and I'm going to go through my weekly meditation with you. And what I wanted to talk about primarily was really about who we are. So about finding out who we are is confusing at best, right? So there are three different ideas of who we are. So there's there is the ego, where we kind of feel like we have to show up a certain way and compare ourselves to others. And then there's this kind of unconscious self, where we carry out certain functions that we think are ourselves, or certain emotions that we feel true to us. And then there's this really deep true self of on a real conscious level that is it's not attached to anything. It's not attached to any emotions. It's just the truest sense of who we are. And you might hear people talk about it as the solid self versus the pseudo self, which is driven by the ego. And the conscious self is the place that we're really trying to get to with meditation. And I don't want that to sound like it's somewhere that is difficult to attain. Something that's difficult to attain, like it's happening outside of ourselves, but it's not. It's within. Everyone has it within them. That's how we came to be. But we have this incredible filter. It's like a safety valve in our heads called the default mode network. This was just discovered in 2001. And it's basically a filter that that comes into being around about the age of 5, when we start making sense of the world, and we start kind of deciding who we are, at 5 years old, I'm not a baby anymore. This is what I like, and I can do it myself. Sound familiar? And we start building this idea of who we are. And this is because we need to have this filter, because if we didn't have the filter, then we would our senses would be overloaded. We wouldn't be able to make sense of the world, because there would be too much coming at us, left, right, and center. So we have this safety filter to keep us safe, to make sense of the world. But it does also become quite ingrained. Like, we get really routine as human beings. We like our human constructs, and we like to know what time we do things, and we set our lives up that way to get an idea of who we are. And so then we become attached to the ego with this idea of who we are, but we lose the sense of how we came to be. So it's a very roundabout way of trying to get to the point of this true self. And so I wanted to quote a couple of things from Deepak Chopra, who says it in a much more clear way than I am right now, but only because it's going to bring it into the idea of meditation. That's what this is leading to. Because when we meditate, we are far more likely to become attached to our true self, to find out who we are. So he would say that what all this comes down to is that the self you identify with is simply the self that you are aware of. There is no fixed self, just as there is no fixed body. You know that your body changes constantly. My body is not the same body as it was 5 minutes ago, because your cells are constantly evolving, growing, changing, sending messages through your body. You are never the same. So no fixed self, just as there is no fixed body. Fighting for your place in line at the post office calls up the ego personality. Feeling tenderness towards a baby calls up the unconscious personality, and feeling that you matter in the great scheme of things calls up the true self. Okay, so to explain that a little bit more, at the level of the true self, all desire for change reaches its goal, because only here is I am enough to bring total fulfillment. No external gratification compares with this. And it seems strange on the face of it that the mind at its most subtle level should be more fulfilled than the mind at more superficial levels. Chasing worldly desires is what life is all about to the vast majority of people. Being still and quiet, by the same token, feels very uncomfortable for many. The key is that pure consciousness contains infinite resources of creativity, bliss, intelligence, love, and awareness. By living close to the source, you have access to this infinite potential that allows you to be a genuine co-creator of reality. So that's kind of cool, because it means that we can create more. We can kind of, when we touch into our deeper self, our conscious self, we open up so much more, so many more possibilities to what we can do. So that brings us to where is this true self? Like, where does it sit? How do we tap into this consciousness? And I like to think of meditation as obviously being the step to that. But what part of a meditation is that? So I like to expand on what we talked about last week. And for those of you that weren't listening to last week's meditation, it was basically about the space between both the thoughts and at the top and the bottom of the breath. So I'll just go over it again just to remind you if you were here, and to tell you about it if you weren't here last week. So in my mind, there was two spaces between, and I just like thinking about the space between. So if you just kind of take that into your mind, the space between, you remember it, you might remember these two ideas. And the usefulness in that is that when you are in your relaxed state, trying to meditate, that you can call to mind these two ideas. So when I'm teaching meditation, the first thing I always teach is that your mind follows your breath, and your breath follows your mind. The two are intrinsically linked. And when we are meditating and we focus on our breath, and the reason we focus on the breath is because of what I just said, the breath follows the mind follows the breath. So if we focus on the breath, not only are we having a one-pointed focus, but we are also monitoring our breath. And when we know that the mind slows down the breath and the breath slows down the mind, we know that if we slow down our breath, we should therefore slow down the mind. And that's actually what happens. It's a scientific fact, so that's good, because it means that, yes, great, we can grasp hold of that, we know it's true, let's work with that, And then what we do with slowing down the mind and do our breathing exercises is that your mind will start to go elsewhere. So you'll start to get thoughts. And that's okay. Your brain is designed to think. So don't berate yourself when you're meditating, when you get a thought coming in. Don't think, oh my God, I'm not meditating anymore. You are. You're just simply noticing that you're having thoughts. And the good thing about that is that when you are noticing that you're having thoughts, you've already brought yourself out of being in your ego. You've stepped away. You've become third party. And you're noticing that you're having thoughts. And that's the first step of meditation. Because then when you're noticing you're having the thoughts, you've got something to work with. Okay? And that something to work with is the space between the thoughts. So there's that space between. The space between the thoughts. So you'll find when you're meditating, you'll focus on the breath for a little bit. And then even when you're still doing a certain breath exercise, you'll find your mind might be thinking about, oh, what time is my appointment this afternoon? Or, what am I going to have at dinner tonight? All that kind of stuff. And that's okay. You just go, oh, I'm not going to get attached to the thought. So you don't get attached to the story of the thought. You don't get attached to the narrative. You just recognize, oh, there's a thought. I'm supposed to be meditating. And you come back to your breath. And the time that you're focusing on your breath, I like to call the space between the thoughts, okay? Because that's your focus time. Then the thought comes in, it's a little bit like a heartbeat, you're kind of breathing for a bit, have a thought, beep, oh, must go back to the breath, breathe again, another thought, oh, come back. So you're trying to expand the space between those bleeps, those thoughts, okay? So that's one space between. And the other space between that I like to talk about, and we covered last week, is when you breathe, say we do square breathing, and that means when you breathe up for a count of, say, 5, hold the breath along the top for 5, out for 5, hold the breath at the bottom for 5, before you breathe in again for 5. You're doing these squares with the breath. With that, when you're holding the breath at the top, and then you let it go out for 5, and then you hold it at the bottom, before you hold it, go in again for 5. Those holding in the breath moments are the other space between. Okay? So it's really cool to think about those two spaces between when you're during your meditation, just kind of reminding yourself, it's not a heavy thought, it just becomes ingrained into the way that you start breathing. And the idea about that, holding the breath at the top and at the bottom, is that there is talk that sometimes that is your truest self. When you're holding onto that breath, you just, as I said last week, hold it as a suspension. I want you to feel like you're just suspended in time, suspended in space, suspended in consciousness. You're fully aware of holding in that breath and how it feels in your body. And sometimes you feel like I can just hold this forever. I don't actually want to even move and let go of the breath. But of course, time takes care of that and you have to stay alive. So it's just a nice practice to take on through that. So, but what I wanted to really focus on, well, obviously, is the big I am, which is your consciousness. It's your big I am, and holding on to that idea of who am I without actually looking for the answers. Because when you say I am, as Deepak was referring to, when you say I am, that is enough. It means I exist. I am. I just am. Nothing else matters. Okay? And I'll talk you through this in this guided meditation, which we're going to start in a minute. But what we're going to do is we're going to close our eyes. We're going to have a few spaces between, and I will talk you through all of that. So you don't need to even think about anything about, oh, what do I do or how do I do it? I'm going to guide you. So I want you just to close your eyes and just get nice and comfortable. So it's really important that when you're sitting, you can let go of all your muscles. And if you've been sitting at your laptop for a while, it's a really good idea to get up every 40 minutes and reset your spine. And also just have a move around your space, before you try and sit and meditate. Because you want to be able to just kind of go, okay, I can relax now. Okay. So just kind of noticing how your body is seated right now with your eyes closed. And just noticing, not trying to breathe in any particular way right now, just want you to notice how you're breathing. So just bring your attention there. Is it relaxed? Is it slow? Is it deep? Is it fast? Is it short? None of those things matter. What's important is just being aware of how your breath is right now. And then just doing a little scan of your body to just see if there's any muscles that you're kind of hanging on to. You know, maybe your fists are holding onto your knees, you know, you could kind of let go of the grip of the fingers. Maybe your jaw is a little bit clenched. If ever you're unsure if your jaw is clenched, just clench it and then let it go. And then you'll know. Same thing with your frown line. If you're not sure if your brow is soft, you can always frown a little bit and then let that go. So then just feeling the softness in your body. A gentle breath. And then we'll start the conscious breathing. So what I want you to do in a moment, and I'll tell you when to start. So just stay nice and easy with your normal breathing for now. But when we start, you're going to be counting in for say 5, holding the breath for a count of 2, and letting it go for a count of 7. Now you might change the ratio, which is why I said not to start yet. If you are happier breathing in for 4 or 3 or 7 or 9, whatever it might be, make sure that whatever you hold it for at the top isn't too long to start, but then the out breath is really long. It's longer than the in breath. So if I breathe in for 5, I might breathe out for 7 or 9. But don't kind of, get to the point where I really need to breathe in again. Allow yourself to just relax into it. It takes a couple of practices. So we'll just start that now. So starting to take a nice breath in and really feel like you're filling yourself up and counting on the in-breath. When you get to the top, holding it for a couple of beats and then letting it go out. Nice and slow. Longer exhale. When you get to the bottom of your exhale, again, same thing, inhaling. But any number that you choose, holding it at the top of that breath just for a couple of beats. And then really slow on the out breath, really long and slow. Whenever you're ready to go again, you go for that. We breathe at different rates, so I'm not going to tell you when to breathe or how long for. You just take what feels right. And just take 2 or 3 more of those, the same thing. So longer out breath, holding it at the top for a beat or 2. As soon as you finish the out breath, you just start breathing in again for the count, whatever count you chose. Just whenever you come to the end of your next exhale, just allowing your breath to relax. You don't have to do anything with it. So take your time. We all breathe at different rates. So whenever you come back, and just noticing. So here's one of those little space between. Just noticing how the body reacts to the stillness after your previous conscious breathing. How does my body feel? Does it feel soft? Does it feel heavy? Do I feel energized? Or do I feel relaxed? Just noticing, doesn't matter what the answer is, there is no correct answer. Yes, feeling that, noticing. And now we're going to take some more conscious breaths. But what I want you to focus on this time is that I want your breaths to be really deep. So when you breathe in, I want you to be really aware of the sides of your rib cage expanding out to the side. So you can feel the rib expanding. You can practice now if you like. We'll do it properly in a moment, but just take a little practice. Just take a really nice deep breath in. So much, and maybe it'll help if your arms are by the sides of your rib cage, so you can breathe into the sides of the arms. And then let that rib cage kind of like just go back, release back. So it goes back in again. And then you can do it again, inhaling. Feeling the ribs expand, and then going back. Just taking a few of those in your own time. And these breaths can be as long or as slow or as short as you like. I just want you to be really aware of that breath expanding the rib cage. And releasing it. And then just take 5 more breaths like this, being really aware. And there's no race with these either. Don't think about, I've got to get through the next 5 breaths. Just allow yourself to do it in your own time. You might even feel every time you take a nice expanse of the rib cage, you might even feel the shoulders rise a little bit. And then you might feel them kind of release on the out breath. And if you're sitting in a chair or anywhere really, again you might feel, as you take a nice in-breath, the shoulders roll back. And then on the out-breath, you just kind of do a little kind of mini rock forward. So this is bringing in very subtle movement to your breath. And it can really kind of help. It's quite soporific to have this kind of little rocking back and forwards of the in and the out. And then you might bring your attention to the front of your body as you take an inhale. And then you might take the attention to the back. As you've done that a couple of times, you might then think about the whole torso. The whole torso expanding on the in-breath and just releasing on the out. You can tie all of that together. Maybe rocking back and forward with that. So I'm going to leave you with that. Well, I'm still going to be here, but I'm not going to talk for a couple of these. So just allow yourself to be really present with that in-breath, filling up your body, filling up the torso, maybe rocking back, maybe rocking forward on the out-breath. So I'm just going to let you do that just silently for a few breaths. I will still be here. And as you're doing that, I want you to imagine not just me doing it with you, but so many other people around the globe taking their meditation. You will be tapping into other people doing this around the world because everybody's doing it at some point of their day. Most people, a lot of people are being really mindful right now. So just know that you are part of a big global collective. Somewhere in the world, other people are breathing with you right now. Just keeping this going. If any thoughts come up while you're taking this exercise, just keep coming back to what it is that you're doing, expanding the whole torso, this conscious breathing. Every part of you breathing into all those back muscles, the shoulder muscles, everything you can. And letting it all soften on that out breath. Just thinking about the rise and the fall. And just taking 2 more of these in your own time. And again, just taking your time. You'll breathe at different rates, so just allow yourself to settle. If you've finished already, just coming back to a normal breath. And if you haven't finished, just finishing that out breath, just softening. And now here we are at another little space between, so just seeing what comes up for you, just experiencing what it's like not to be consciously breathing. I want you to breathe naturally now. Don't change anything. Just be really conscious of the fact that you're breathing exactly as you're meant to right now. And just see what comes up for you. It might just be the absolute release and a little bit of relief from not doing that conscious breathing. That was quite energizing. So that means it takes a bit of energy. So just allowing yourself to be soft now. And seeing what materializes. Maybe noticing any sensations in your body. Might be a tingling in your hands. Might be some muscles softening a little bit more. It might be a real stillness. So still to the point that you don't even feel like breathing, because that takes some energy. You just want to kind of stay really still, that beautiful calm sense of self, like a pond with water dripping into it, causing ripples. And then as the water drops stop, coming to that nice stillness. Just feeling that. So here's this little time to explore. If a thought comes into your mind, just come back to experiencing how you are right now in this moment. Noticing a very, very simple, subtle breath. The breath that you're not choosing to consciously breathe into. You're just allowing it to breathe naturally. But you're being aware of it this time. This is a breath that we have most of our day. The breath we're not really thinking about. But here's your chance to really notice it. Brilliant breath. Fantastic. It's just doing exactly what it needs to do. And now we're just going to come to that other space between where we hold the breath for a little bit longer. So what we're going to do now, so this is back to conscious breathing, and then I'll bring you back to the stillness again. So I want you to breathe in for a certain count. Let's call it the square breathing again, as I described that to you before. You don't need to open your eyes, there's nothing to see. But imagine again that you're counting up for a certain number, holding the breath at the top. And this is the important part this time. Although we've done square breathing before, this is a time I want you to really focus on that breath that you're holding in. And I want you to just be as still as you can and just think about that suspension, that pause button. That you feel like nothing else exists apart from this absolute consciousness. It's the most present aware that you can be. And you can hold that breath for as long as you like. I called it square breathing so that you could get the right pattern, but you might turn that square into a rectangle if it's a really long hold on the inhale. And then of course when you let the breath go, don't worry about the measurements so much. But then you're going to, again, at the bottom, hold it. Now, you might find if you held your breath for a long time at the top, that when you hold it at the bottom, it might not be as long because you might be desperate to breathe in again. And nobody can hear you, so don't worry about that. If you have to be quite loud with your, don't worry about that. Doesn't matter. What is important is focusing on the breaths that you're holding. So the in-breath and the out-breath. So I'm not going to count you in because you're going to have a different ratio to me. And I just want you to focus on the in-breath that you're holding. Let the breath go when you've had enough of that. And then I want you to focus on the out-breath. And it can get quite tiring. So if you need to take a little pause between, just use that as a little space between and then go back to it. So whenever you're ready, starting now, breathing in. Feeling that suspension of that held in breath. Letting it go whenever you want. Same with the out breath. Holding it for as long as you feel okay. Don't get to the point where it starts getting uncomfortable. Just breathe in normally. And you will find after a few of these that you do get out of breath. So I just want you to relax it and go back to normal breathing. You can always go back into the rectangle again. Just remember that you're focusing on the suspension of the in and the out, your space between that pure consciousness. And I'm not going to talk for the next 5 minutes so that you can really feel it. And any random thoughts that you have, just come back to your breathing and remember to take little rests in between. Just finishing off your last cycle of your rectangle, just finishing that one off. And again, we're all at different ratios, so just take your time. But when you get to the end of the exhale, now you've got to really just let your breath go. Just breathe normally, whatever your breath asks of you. Without conscious breathing, your body knows exactly what it needs. It knows how to breathe. And this stillness is really where the magic happens now. You probably find your breath getting a little bit more subtle. You might just be experiencing the release of not doing the rectangles anymore, just letting that go. Feeling that softness. And really being aware of that space between, the space between the thoughts. You might even find that subconsciously you're holding your breath when you breathe out more now. It's often a sign of being more relaxed. Don't worry if you're not, but you might find as you get more into it and you get softer, you're just not breathing so much. You just go, very chilled. And it's these lovely, still, calm moments. You can just be at peace with yourself, that lovely idea that we were talking about at the beginning, the true self, where you just know, I am. It's your existence. I am. No attachment to ego. Just this deeper connection, this calm inner knowing. This slowing of the mind where you don't need to work anything out. Creating this infinite space. I am. And I'd like to give you this opportunity to stay where you are. I'm going to finish the meditation, but I would like, if you would like, to just continue with that feeling. If you are in a place where you feel really relaxed and you're able to play with the ideas that we talked about and just keep really nice sense of calm that you might have created for yourself right now, then when I stop the video, just stay where you are and stay with it as long as it feels okay. And just make sure that when you bring yourself out of it, you do so in the way that you went in. So in other words, you just start to consciously breathe again to wake up your body in a physical sense. But you keep your mind nice and calm. So you've got an option. You can either do that now by increasing the in-breath so it becomes conscious breath, or just stay right where you are. When the video ends, you can just continue exactly where you are, just feeling the I am.